The church bells were still ringing when my phone buzzed. Caregiving, 60 hours per week. I stared at the caregiver agreement Kayla made me sign. I kept receipts and pill logs. Then invited a probate attorney to Sunday dinner. I'm Franklin Hale, 71. I live in an old wooden house looking out on a little bay off Lake Erie, where the gulls land on the dock like regulars. Folks here call it our inland sea. No salt, but we've got breakwalls, a lighthouse, and wind that cuts through bone. Every morning I pour a weak cup of coffee and crack the window just long enough for the cold to sink into my joints. Then I close it. On the kitchen counter sits my wedding photo with Helen, my wife. She's been gone 3 years. The picture still stands like a windbreak, keeping the room from feeling emptier than it has to. I worked the railroad as a mechanic. Hammers, oil, the steady rhythm of rails. Those things taught me that when everything sits in its groove, people don't have to shout. I like order. I go to church every week and sit in the third pew on the left where I can see the organ. I keep small ledgers, gas money, pill times, when I change the furnace filter, who dropped by. Helen used to say I kept books like an accountant. I joke, if life comes with no receipts, how do you know where you've been? My son, Evan, is gentle and avoids conflict. He married Kayla 7 years ago. Kayla talks fast, smooth, careful with words. Early on, I appreciated how she smiled while packing food for the kids, Lily and Max. Later, she leaned on phrases like family harmony, stability, let's keep relatives from meddling. I didn't think much of it. I don't have many relatives left to meddle. I've lived long enough to know this. The loudest thing in any house isn't the relatives, it's money. The day Kayla set the caregiver agreement on my table, a misty rain came in sideways off the lake. She said paperwork would protect the family, so any care, rides to the doctor, meds, tidying up, would be clear and fair. No hard feelings. Evan sat beside her, glancing at a phone that kept lighting up with work messages. I looked at the bold headings: scope of care, hourly rate, payment schedule, and saw order. I didn't put on my reading glasses. Kayla skimmed the rate part like wind over water, then said, I'll send the full breakdown at the local rate later. Don't worry. She repeated for peace, and I signed. My hand shook a little, but the line stayed straight. Maybe I was thinking of Helen. If she were here, she'd want the house peaceful too. A week later, after a sermon on truth and mercy, my phone buzzed once. Auto debit, home caregiving, 60 hours per week. I was in church. After the service, I poured coffee for the seniors. Watered-down brew filled the hallway. I looked at the alert and felt what you feel when a stranger grazes your elbow. Not pain, just wrong. Back home, I pulled open the drawer for my glasses. I set the contract on the table. The lake wind creaked the window. The notary stamp at the top was as faded as sea foam. Estimated weekly hours, written by hand, 60. I slid a fingernail over the ink. On the shelf, our wedding photo leaned a little. I straightened it. That night, for the first time since Helen's funeral, I opened the old pill log, flipped to pages with her handwriting reminding me of the missed evening dose. Frank, don't forget. I set the log beside the contract. Suddenly everything lined up like rails and ties. I started keeping records. From then on, every grocery receipt came in 2 copies. One for the wallet, one stapled into the notebook. I wrote the time in the margin. Each time the bank texted in or out, I took a screenshot and noted where I was, what I was doing. Every pill I took, I wrote the time and the count left in the bottle. If Pastor took me to visit the sick, I noted his license plate. Folks say it's fussy. I'm quiet. Quiet gets to be meticulous. I didn't tell Evan. I could picture his face, sorry, stuck, and then him looking at Kayla to figure out what to say. I didn't want him trapped in the middle. I saw Dr. Molina and asked for a memory and reflex check. The kind of thing people wave around to say you're competent or not. She smiled. You've got the recall of a man who kept rail ledgers. You're doing just fine, Mr. Hale. I laughed, short, like a latch lifting. She printed a capacity note, said I could use it if anyone tried to treat me otherwise. Then I called Gloria Park. She's a probate/elder law attorney a friend of Helen's used, back when his daughter wanted to sell his house before the deed was ready. Gloria's voice is sparse and exact. She doesn't paint courtrooms in the clouds. She asked to see the contract and bank records. I brought them. She read once, then again, set down her tea. A caregiver agreement isn't bad by itself. Lots of families need clarity. But you're saying money leaves your account while you're in church, and 60 hours a week for a man as independent as you. That's odd. We'll need to match hours, task notes, and proof of presence. I told her about the pill log, the receipts, the church schedule, the bulletin listing me on Thursday coffee duty, and about Mrs. Dottie, the neighbor who keeps coupons and remembers my comings and goings better than I do. Gloria nodded and told me to keep recording. If Kayla's doing right, documentation protects her. If she isn't, it protects you. I heard no malice in that, only straightness. I worked rail, I respect straight. The wind shifted in the weeks that followed. Far off at dawn, a freight horn sounded like a thread. I swept the porch. Sparrows pecked the railing. Sometimes Kayla popped in with a tote and checked boxes out loud. How I slept, ate, whether I took pills. She typed into her phone. I offered church pie. She was off sugar. When she left, her perfume hung in the hall. I photographed the wall clock. The picture read 10:12 a.m. The bank alert just below it said 10:05 a.m. Home caregiving, auto transfer. One afternoon, a care note Kayla sent Evan popped onto my kitchen screen because I'd left Bluetooth on. The note said, administered meds 10:15 a.m. I opened my pill log. That slot was blank. 10:15 I was in Bible study. I can forgive error. But error repeated with perfect billing isn't error. Gloria said we should examine the witness signature on the care plan. The name matched someone with public records in Miami. Could be another person with the same name, Gloria said. But we'll see about flights or proof they were in Ohio the day of signing. I smiled thinly. On a steady downpour, who flies from Miami to Erie just to sign a paper? She didn't smile. She typed. Also the hourly rate, $65, she said. Do you know the median around here? I shook my head. She told me a much lower number. I felt my lips pinch up the way they do when I meet a bolt with stripped threads. The worst came when I found an old care note listing Helen Hale as the person confirming my meds. I froze. I touched the looping Helen. Except the hand wasn't hers. Helen has been gone 3 years. Someone used her name to testify to something that never happened. I leaned on the table and heard the wood groan. The smell of roasted chicken lingered in the oven, but I couldn't swallow. I slept little that night. Listened to waves slap the stone break wall, wind hissing through the frame, bark rasping the fence. I walked through mental doorways like a man checking track before a train. I decided to invite the family to Sunday dinner. I invited Gloria, too. In the group text I wrote, I need someone to help me speak clearly about paperwork. Kayla replied fast with a smiley. Evan typed, okay, coming early. I marinated chicken on Saturday, bought corn, 2 Kaiser rolls. At the market, Dottie leaned close. If you need someone to say where you were when, I'm a wristwatch with legs. I thanked her. Her fingers were cold on the back of my hand. On Sunday after the service, Pastor asked why I looked tired. I said, family dinner. He gave a sad smile. Some confessions belong before dinner, not after. I smiled back. I thought of Helen. She hated noise but didn't tolerate lies. She once said, if someone uses my name for a thing I didn't do, that's borrowing the breath of the dead to blow up a lie. I'm not a man for heavy words. This time, I borrowed hers. I set the table. The old tablecloth still has a tea stain that never comes out. I placed the sauce dish right over it like Helen used to. I stacked papers, weekly bank statements, photos of the wall clock, church bulletin, a copy of the care plan, Kayla's mileage claim for a day. Pastor drove me to the doctor. I laid a blue marker across the pile like a pointing finger. Evan arrived first. I know his engine by heart. Lily and Max burst in with a whoa at the chicken smell. I plated them small drumsticks. Kayla came after, hair pinned neat, carrying lemon bars. Low sugar, she said. I smiled and sat her down. Gloria came last, heavy coat, knit scarf, eyes sweeping the room for a chair that fit both guest and business. We ate a while in silence, knife on bread, spoon on plate. I told the kids 2 rail stories. Lily asked if I ever slept on a train. I said once, when the snow was bad and the heaters needed watching. Kayla smiled politely. Maybe we could do the paperwork first, then dessert? I set down my fork. I asked Ms. Park here, I said slow, because in this house everyone deserves the same story. One time, plain. I signed a caregiver agreement thinking order would give us peace, but these last weeks my account paid for care while I sat in church. I've got clock photos, the bulletin, the pill log. I don't want anyone humiliated. I want the truth standing where it belongs. Gloria spoke evenly. Kayla, a valid caregiver agreement needs time logs, clear tasks, a reasonable local rate, a real witness, no backdating, and no billing when the caregiver isn't present. I'm not here to quarrel. I'm here to see if we can put this back on track. Kayla crossed her arms, lips tight, then eased. I was trying to keep relatives out. Evan told me there was fighting in the family. She looked at him. He stared at the tea stain. In that second I understood why he never set a glass there. He didn't know where his wife stood around that stain. I flipped papers. Top was the photo of the wall clock, 10:05 AA. M under it, the bank alert, 10:05 AA. M home caregiving, auto transfer. Next to it, the bulletin listing Bible study 10 to 11:30 with a picture of me pouring coffee. Pastor's grinning behind me like he just cracked a joke that made me wrinkle my nose. I set out the printed care note that read, Administered meds 10:15. I pointed the marker at my pill log, blank for that time, because I wasn't home. Kayla sped up. I might have typed the time wrong, but I put so much into caring for you. I come every week. Gloria cut in softly. How many hours each week? Do you have in outlogs signatures by the recipient or a witness? Kayla was silent, then poked through her phone. I didn't fill the quiet. I breathed. The kitchen still smelled warm. Gloria picked up a photocopy of the care plan and tapped the witness line. This name, Cassandra P., in Miami. I checked. She works at a clinic there. Her flight and shift records show she was in Florida the day you say she signed in Ohio. Can you explain? Kayla stalled. It's just a template. I used a sample signature to complete the form. I was going to circle back for a real witness. Evan's head jerked up, eyes shocked. A spoon clattered. One of the kids, then Kayla's breath came rough. Neither Gloria nor I said forgery. She simply turned to another care note where the medication witness read, Helen Hale. She set it next to Helen's wedding photo, as if placing two women in one frame. When did Helen pass? She asked gently. 3 years ago, I said. This note is dated 2.5 years after that. Evan pressed a finger to his brow like wiping away a stain no one can see. Kayla opened and closed her mouth twice, a fish in sudden sun. Kayla. Gloria's voice stayed mild. This is a home, not a courtroom. There are children here and a father. I'm offering 2 roads. First, we draft an agreement tonight to cancel the arrangement, stop all auto transfers, and you commit to repay any unsupported funds on a schedule we all sign. Mr. Hale will hire an agency with electronic timekeeping as needed. Evan and his father will review financial powers. Second, I gather everything, including the use of a deceased person's name on care records, and refer it to the proper authorities. I don't prefer the second road, but I will take it. Outside, the maples shook, leaves rubbing like papers changing hands. Kayla looked at Evan. You said you'd back me. I did this to keep this house out of messes. Evan inhaled hard. This house doesn't need peace paid for with Dad's money. I didn't look closely. I'm sorry, Dad. The last words came out as a whisper. I nodded. My heart thudded in a strange way, old grief mixing with a new lightness. We'll take the first road, I said, like threading a mangled bolt back to true. But there's no trade for the truth. The truth isn't merchandise. Kayla's mouth shaped sacrifice or I'm exhausted. But then she saw Helen's photo, saw Evan's eyes, and saw the blue marker in Gloria's hand. She nodded, barely. Lily asked, Did Grandma like roast chicken? A child's question drifted through the room like a lighthouse sweep over dark water. She loved the crispy skin best, I said. When the memo was signed, Gloria rinsed her teacup. Her posture carried respect for this kitchen. even after she'd marked lines that would change how we looked at one another. "I'll draft the formal document in the morning," she said. "You and Evan will stop the autopay at the bank. After that, if Kayla repays on time and there's no repeat, this stays private. If not, we take the second road." She buttoned her coat, thanked the kids, and nodded to me. The door closed so softly I could hear the lake. Kayla packed the lemon bars and said she'd leave some for the kids. She stared at the table like a yard after a storm. "I'm sorry," she said, small. I shook my head. I don't know where the fault began. I only know lies seek the nicest coats to wear. Here, the coat said Harmony. Evan took the kids to the car. Before he left, he hugged me. Short, awkward, the way men raised in cold wind do. But when he let go, his shoulders sat one notch lower. You can't stand straight with two hammers closing in. That night I sat alone with the hum of the fridge and the breath of the furnace. I opened the pill log and wrote a new line. 9:05 p.m. Meds taken. Then another. Next week. Higher local agency hours. Gloria's suggestion. Electronic logs. I called Pastor, not to confess, but to ask for a ride to the dock in the morning. I wanted the smell of wet wood and machine oil, to remember things can fall back into rhythm if you tighten the line. Monday was gray. Evan and I went to the bank. The teller knows me and asked after my health. I handed over Gloria's memo. She stopped the autopay and printed full statements. Evan's hand on the counter shook like mine did when I signed the contract. When it was done, he said, "I'll set up a Saturday run for groceries." "I won't let this happen again." I said, "Don't make a lot of promises. Do one thing, steady, like a train arriving when it says it will." That afternoon, Gloria sent the formal agreement. Cancel the caregiver deal. Repayment over 6 months. If late, we flip to legal. Kayla won't represent me in any financial matter. Old care notes are suspended. I signed, Evan signed. Kayla signed last without looking at the webcam. The pen scratch through the computer speaker sounded like wind sliding across water. Quick, cold, clean. 2 weeks later, I interviewed a local home care agency. The coordinator showed me the electronic check-in. Every visit pings in with GPS, tasks ticked in an app, billed hours match logs. I liked how truth gets recorded in small beeps. I hired 4 hours a week, 2 for the heavy grocery run, 2 for cleaning. The rest I can manage. At the start of the month, Kayla made the first repayment. The note said, "For Dad." I read those 2 words a few times. I don't know if she meant to Dad or because of Dad. Maybe that difference matters less than the money going where it should. Another day, Dottie came by with church chicken pot pie. "You looked latched tight before that storm," she said. "Looser now." I smiled. "Storm passed, wind remains." She nodded. "Wind you can live with." She tapped my pill log and admired Helen's neat hand. "She had good script," she said. I wrote Pastor a note. "Thanks for not prying, for the car, for letting me stand in the church kitchen and pour coffee without having to say, 'I'm fine.' At my age, fine weighs as much as a freight car. Kids are different. Lily brought a drawing, the dock, me, and a blue fish that doesn't swim in Lake Erie. 'I call it the peace fish,' she said. I stuck it on the fridge next to the medicine calendar. Each morning I mark an X on the new day. It feels like a hammer going down, gentle. One Friday, Evan came hauling a big trash bag. He talked about work, about Max learning to swim, then stopped. "Dad, I let things drift because I was afraid. I thought as long as the house was quiet, we were okay. I forgot you are the house." I poured him water. "You're my son," I said. "Fear can be a kind of manners, unless it blinds you." He nodded, brow wrinkling like when he was small. "I'm going to talk to Kayla about our marriage. Not to defend her, to figure out if we still share anything called true." I didn't ask the outcome. Some tracks split beyond the switchman's reach. Seasons turned. Maples went red, then gold, then bare. The wind eased. The third repayment landed on time. Gloria called to check in. I said things were back on track. She laughed, openly for the first time. "I like that word from a man who knows it." I said, "You can bend a rail back, but you stop the train first." Now and then Kayla texts polite check-ins. No more "I'm so busy." No more "for peace." I answer briefly, neither warm nor cold, room temperature. The kids stay the kids, eating corn, begging for crispy skin, asking about trains. The house stopped howling. One Sunday, pastor preached on little lights, the oil lamp in a window telling sailors a house is still awake. He said a lamp doesn't stop a storm. It reminds the people inside who they are. I looked up through stained glass at the lake's steel face. I thought of Helen, of that fake signature, of roads 1 and 2. I'm not satisfied that someone used my wife's name. Forgiveness belongs to God. I keep ledgers. But I chose not to turn my kitchen into a courthouse. I chose to underline the truth with a blue marker. Statements, bulletins, pill logs, things that don't lie. When the 4th repayment ran 3 days late, Gloria asked if she should trigger the 2nd road. I said, 4 more days. On the 3rd day, Kayla paid and sent a long email. Therapy, her habit of controlling by paperwork, her fear of being poor, of being judged for leaving a father-in-law to fend for himself, and her belief that thick documents would make her voice heavier in the house. I closed the email. Fear is a kind of wind. You can't staple wind to a receipt. By the last month, snow salted the curb. The final payment came in. I called the agency and cut housekeeping hours in half. My back had come around. I re-squared a sagging porch step, drove a fresh screw. Wood smelled warm. The screw bit clean. My spine popped like old ties. That night I pan-fried yellow perch. I set the plate and took out the little dish Helen used for crispy skin, left it empty. She's gone. But the place is still hers. Evan and the kids came. Kayla came too, and sat corner across. She ate slowly, glancing at the photo. When we cleared the table, she said, "I know sorry doesn't give her name back." I nodded. "Her name stays here," I tapped my forehead, "not under any witness line." The kids asked, "Where's the peace fish?" I pointed at the fridge. "Right there," I said. "It's always there." We stepped out to the porch. The wind hauled lake cold up the steps. Streetlight glowed on a patch of thin ice. Evan said he'd get the kids to bed early. Kayla lingered. She offered to take me to Wednesday groceries. Off the clock. I said I already had agency hours. She nodded like she knew. "If you need someone to push the cart," she said. I didn't accept or refuse. "We go to the store to buy food," I said, "not to buy back trust. Trust has to grow." When the house quieted, I killed the big light and left the small lamp in the window, the one facing the bay. Helen called it the anchor light. She said, "It doesn't guide ships. It tells us our house is awake." I sat and listened to the furnace tick. I wrote one more line in the pill log. Peace is when no receipt is lying. I closed the book and rested my palm on the soft cover. Soft from 3 years of use and the 30 before when Helen wrote in it too. Next Sunday, the bells rang and I sat in the 3rd pew again. Pastor saw me and nodded. I no longer waited for bank alerts, even though my phone still wrote in my pocket. After service, I poured coffee and looked through the kitchen window at the yard where the kids ran circles. I thought about what we'd passed through. My shaky signature, the faded notary seal, a witness from Miami, Helen Hale on a cold line, Gloria's blue marker, the memo on a tea-stained cloth, and the crispy chicken skin Helen loved. Rails and ties, some bent, some true, laid back in order so the train could move. People ask what I would have done if Kayla hadn't signed. I was ready for that. Gloria made the 2 roads plain. Some will say I went soft, that I should have let the law bite from the start, should have dragged the forgery into bright public light. Maybe they're right. But my house isn't City Hall. It's a place with a drawing of a blue fish, a tablecloth we deliberately never scrubbed clean to remember who sat there. I don't need a trophy on that spot. I need the truth. And I need the people I love to learn how to stand upright. On a clear afternoon, I walked to the dock. Old pilings still soaked in cold water. The steel caps went dull years ago. Gulls lined up like handwritten letters that never learned to sit straight. I breathed deep. Out on the gray, a small boat cut through, ripples spreading in rings. I thought of Pastor's little lights. It hit me. Not every lamp is for the road ahead. Some lamps are for those inside to look at and remember they're keepers of the door. Back home, I set the grocery bag on the table. I tore off the receipt, wrote the time in the margin, folded it into the notebook. Maybe it seems odd, an old man still saving slips. But for me, writing things down isn't about distrusting the world. It's how I tell Helen I've kept the house lit. If the wind shifts or a storm rolls in, whoever's far off still knows the way home. And someday, when the kids stand in front of someone who says for harmony, a little too smooth, they'll open a notebook, read straight lines, and understand. Peace is never bought with counterfeit hours. Night settled like the lake's surface. I set my hand on the wedding photo. In the anchor light, Helen's eyes looked brighter. "I brought things back to track," I whispered. "Not perfect. Enough to move the train." Somewhere out on the old line, a night freight blew its horn. I closed my eyes and listened. The wheels meeting steel, steady and sure. And I believed that come morning the church bells would ring, my phone would stay quiet, and the roast chicken would sit right over the tea stain, waiting for another dinner, warm and calm.